In a previous video, I took apart one of these NOCO Boost GBX55s that I had purchased on eBay, not working, and I was able to make it work. So since then, I was unable to resist this deal that also came up on eBay for a NOCO Boost GBX55, which is the 1750 amp version, and it has the leads included. So it does the same thing so far, no response when I press buttons, as the GBX45 did. Unfortunately, this one I discovered also has an additional problem, which is this cut insulation, so I'll have to address that. But I thought I would take this one apart and find out if it's got the same problem that the GBX45 did, which is just the internal battery being too low for the BMS to charge it. And I'm going to go through some of the steps that I glossed over in that previous video. So the first thing to do is to check it out a little bit more thoroughly and see if it's receiving any charge at all. I'll start with just a regular old 1 amp USB-A wall charger, and I've got this neat little cable that actually has a meter built into the USB-C end, but it's a USB-A to USB-C cable. And we'll just see if that turns up anything at all when I plug it in to charge. This is the first time I've plugged it in at all. I'll plug it into the USB-C port here, and nothing showing on the screens here, and nothing on this little meter here. And so with that done, I think I'll switch over to using this inline meter, which gives me a little bit more information. I'm going to use USB-C and find out if there's any power flowing whatsoever. I'm going to use a power delivery power supply. This is for a MacBook. So I'll plug power from the MacBook power supply to the input on my meter here, and then connect the output of the meter to the USB port, the USB-C port that is, on the NOCO, and we'll see if we have any activity whatsoever. Okay, so the meter turned on and it's showing 5 volts. Now it's in pass-through mode, so it's not triggering any of the power negotiation that goes on with USB-C power delivery. It's just showing what's flowing through it. And it's showing 5 volts and essentially no current is actually flowing. So with that done, I'm gonna go ahead and treat it like I did the previous one, the GBX45, and just assume that it's got a extra low battery inside. So I haven't opened one of these up before. It is a little bit different, form factor and case. It's got these built-in leads, so that could create some complication when trying to remove the back off of here. But I'm gonna go ahead and treat it just like the GBX45 and see if I can take this apart. So I learned last time it's good to heat up this rubber, but also you need to heat the plastic as well to make that glue separate. And the plastic needs to be heated up anyway so that any foam, tape, or glue adhesive that's inside here that may be attaching the back of the case to the battery, so that that'll come apart as well. So because of those reasons, I'm gonna go ahead and use my big heat gun rather than my hot air station for soldering. This just puts out a bit more heat and spreads it out a lot more too. So I'm gonna go ahead and just heat up, mainly focusing on these rubber rails, and then see if I can start peeling them off. Okay, that's hot to the touch, so I'm gonna go ahead and use one of these little plastic prying tools to see if I can pry up the end of this piece of rubber here. And as I get underneath it, yeah, it's coming up. I'm gonna add some more heat right at the place where I'm trying to peel it back so that it pulls up the adhesive with it and doesn't leave residue behind. Just using the medium heat setting and aiming it right at the place where the adhesive meets the plastic. And with a little bit of tension, I can see when I've got to the right heat, because it'll actually start peeling back on its own, really. Okay, so here's the first side. It came off just like the GBX45. The difference is it has this little side plug here that goes into this hole where the screw hole is right here. So that came out no problem. On to the next one. Okay, there we go. There's the second one. That came out no problem. I'm gonna set these aside. And we'll look inside here. It's hard to see, but it looks like it does have the same triangle screws down inside there that were on the GBX45. It's hard to get them on camera, but yeah, I'll get out the bit and show you what that looks like. So here's my triangle bit set that I bought online. And the TA27 is the one, I've actually got two of them, is the one that was needed last time. So TA27 triangle head is the bit that you'll need. I'll start by just loosening them by hand. Make sure that that's the right size head. Yep, good fit. So they loosened up fine. I'm gonna switch over to power screwdriver here to take them out the rest of the way. Okay, there's all 6 screws removed. So now we have to find out if it'll come apart, if there's adhesive inside, if the battery's held to the back of the case, and also critically what to do with these cables. It seems like they're gonna have to slide inward perhaps as the case comes off, but let's find out. Oh, well, that came apart pretty easily in terms of separating from the other side. So now we have to figure out what to do with these battery cables. It looks like there's this rubber part is like its own little insert that will slide out of the back case. The other thing is there's definitely adhesive that wants to hold these two cases together. So I might actually focus on that first. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and just apply more heat to the back side since that's what worked on the previous model. There's good heat on both sides, but not in the center where I'm guessing the adhesive is. So let me see if I can get that. Now, plastic is a very, very bad conductor of heat, very poor thermal conductivity. And so what you have to remember is that when you're heating up plastic, it's going to be very localized. That is, unlike something like aluminum, it's not going to spread out evenly. It's going to stay in the place you heat, and it's going to take a long time to permeate through and be hot on the other side like I want it in this case. But it does seem like it's coming apart. Here we go. There's that sound. It doesn't worry me anymore of the foam tape disconnecting from the case. So we have a little bit of wiggle room now. On the negative side here, you can see that's connected to the board, which would turn the battery, enable and disable the battery. And the positive side is connected directly to the battery, but there's not a lot of room to pull it away from the battery. And let's see what I can figure out. So there's some screws in there that actually you can just see a screw in there that holds this side overmolding on, and that would be holding the battery cable in place, and that's what is preventing further removal of this case because it's also connected very closely to the battery there. So you know what, let's see if I can do a repair here without taking this all the way apart. Change of plan. Number 2, 3, 4, I've lost track, but I'm gonna see if I can get this all the way out because it started to come out on its own. There we go. Okay, so now we've got sort of 3 parts, the battery floating in the center and the 2 cases. And now I should be able to actually remove this overmolded part. Yeah, that's just a Torx bit. Let me go ahead and do that. Since I'm trying to demonstrate this anyways, maybe it'll be useful to someone else to see what it's like with the case open. So I've got this Torx bit set. I like these because they're long, and that's way too big. They happen to be the security style too, the hole in the end, but that's not needed in this case. Now obviously metal tools inside the case, I have to be careful. Make sure it's not touching something else that's metal that may be important. So I'm just gonna remove this screw with a bit of care. Make sure to catch it on its way out. Okay. So that one's free, and now this should pull out. Ah, there we go. Much nicer. Okay, that's much nicer to work with. So now we can see the internals pretty clearly. You've got the positive lead goes straight to the battery, and the negative lead or clamp goes to this relay block, which would actually enable and disable power from the battery to the clamps. And everything's just held together with this foam tape, which is, I guess, a pretty smart design, but feels a little weird at times to have everything just sort of loosey-goosey in here. All right, enough talking for me. Now that I've got this opened up, I can very easily connect to the parts that I want to. So I'm going to connect negative to the side of the battery, or to the side of this relay board that actually connects to the battery. Try to get a good secure connection on there. And then for the positive side, I am just going to connect to the battery clamp. And why don't I do a double clamp here? Okay, so I've got the clamp from my power supply, clamping the clamp for the battery terminal. Take a little twist out of the cable here. All right, even better. Positive and negative, and power supply, which is acting as a multimeter right now, is showing just 2.59 volts. So this battery, which is almost certainly 4S, 4 LiPo cells, or I'm not sure if they're LiPo, but I assume cells in series. I know that they are 4.2 volt max cells, and that's a 16.8 volt maximum voltage when all 4 cells are balanced and fully charged up. Clearly 2.5 volts for 4 cells is way too low. That's like 0.625 volts per cell. So I'm gonna turn on my power supply at, let's set it to, 2.5 volts per cell would be 10 volts total. I don't think I'll need to go that high, but let's go to 10 volts. And for starting, I'm just gonna set the, starting current really low. I'm just gonna do 50 milliamps. So set point is 10 volts and 50 milliamps. And watch the voltage meter here. Let's see if it charges up. Reposition things a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn it on. Yep, so it's actually flowing 53 milliamps, it looks like. And it's slowly charging up. We see the voltage is already at 3.75, coming up pretty quickly. And that's kind of not surprising when they're really, really low. The initial charge up happens pretty quickly in terms of the voltage rise. Just 1/4 watt of charging at this point. And keep in mind, this is a battery that's designed to work with USB power delivery, 60 watt fast charging. So we're 1/240th of the wattage that it is rated for. But at these low voltages, it really is good to charge really slowly. The sort of rule of thumb that I tend to keep in mind is like, don't fast charge it until it's over 2 volts per cell. And the slower the better, really. There's no disadvantage except for time to charging slowly. And the disadvantage to charging quickly is that at the far end, you might create a dangerous situation. If you've got a bad battery pack and you're giving it lots of current, you could create an overheating or even a fire situation. I think that's an unlikely scenario, but even in the absence of that, quick charging when it's at a low voltage is just tough on the cells themselves. And you may be reducing the lifetime of the battery pack if you're fast charging at low voltage. So we're up to 6 volts now, so 1.5 volts per cell. That happened pretty quickly. And at 1.5 volts per cell, I'm comfortable kicking it up to 100 milliamps, which is still just very, very slow charge rate. So we're at 0.64 watts of charging right now. 1/10 of the, 1/100th of the charge rate that is possible. Voltage is continuing to come up. Naturally, the wattage, your charge rate is actually changing as your voltage is increasing because I'm only controlling for the current right now, in case that's not obvious. So the charge rate will naturally increase a little bit in terms of the wattage. But so far, so good. Pretty soon here, I'm going to plug in my USB-C meter and plug it into the charge port and see if if current starts flowing. That'll tell me that the BMS inside this battery pack has taken over and is allowing a charge to happen. At that point, I'm gonna let it take care of everything from there forward. So I think that point is about now. So I'll zoom out and we'll set it up so that we have my power supply connected to the battery directly, and then we have a separate power input to the actual USB-C charge port. Here's the moment of truth. Okay, look at that. Charge indicated by the screen turning on, but also the immediate kick up to 20 volts. So I'll do that again. This time I'm going to unplug from the Apple charger. I'll disconnect it, and you can see the battery voltage level being fed only by the power supply is 7.45, almost 7.5 volts. I'm going to plug in the USB-C charger. This goes from 5 to 20 volts quite quickly, and that's USB power delivery, negotiating a compatible charging voltage. And nonetheless, only 0.04 amps flowing right now, just 8.82 watts. 0.82 watts is so low for a charging circuit that that almost suggests to me that the BMS is on but not enabling charging. So let's let this keep on charging up to closer to 10 volts. That would be 2.5 volts per cell. And if that doesn't do it, we'll keep on going all the way up. So we're coming up on 8 volts. There it is. So the battery pack is at 8 volts, which would be roughly 2 volts per cell. Now there could be some variation amongst the cells, but certainly the BMS that's in this is monitoring each cell voltage, and I imagine it has a set point for the minimum voltage that any cell must be at before it will allow charging. So 8 volts is significant because that's roughly 2 volts per cell. Let's see if I unplug the USB charger, plug it back in, just in case it only does kind of a yes or no go once when it's plugged in. That tells me that it's still not ready to give it the full charge. Let's let it go a little bit higher. In fact, now that we're at 2 volts per cell, I'm comfortable with upping the current again. So 2 volts per cell, this is normally, let's see, let's do quick math. So 60 watt charger is what it's capable of handling. At nearly full charge, this whole pack would be at 15 volts. So let's say 60 divided by 15 would be 4, so 4 amps. So when this thing is really going at full fast charge rate of 60 watts, it's apparently capable of accepting something like 4 amps. So we're only at 100 milliamps right now, or 0.1 amps. I'm going to set it to 0.5 amps, 500 milliamps. I'm going to let it go up to 10 volts and try again. Okay, we're up to 10 volts now, and my voltage limit is kicked in, and now it's limiting the current. So 10 volts, and we got up to about 5 watts. Let's unplug the USB charger again, plug it in, see what it does. Yeah, a little over 3 watts just for a moment, and then it quits. So at this point, I'm going to disconnect. Let's turn things over such that I can see what's going on the screen. I'll turn this on again. There we go. So we're charging at 0.5 amp again. Now let's hook up the battery meter again. And now let's plug it into the power source. Okay, interesting. So maybe I should have turned this over earlier. It is indicating power, and it's flashing the first charging light, but then it turns to a red charge indicator, and I believe that means low charge voltage, or basically charge input power is too low. There's something strange here because it seems to be what's limiting that charging input. So it's limiting the charge input to be very low, and then it's giving us an indicator that the charge input is too low. So at this point, I think we're still probably not to the point where USB is able to charge it yet. So let's disconnect this. Let's leave it disconnected. Let's go ahead and ramp up the maximum voltage. So we'll go to 12. That'll be average of 3 volts per cell. In fact, let's go just a little bit higher. Let's go to 13, and we'll see if the USB charger with the internal BMS will take over. Just checking in along the way to see if it's changed its mind about charging yet. Hey, look at that. Okay, so we were at 11.5 volts. We plugged it in, and it's charging at 4 watts. Let's see if we can find out where that set point is. Let me turn off the charging here. I'm gonna let it fall. Ideally, I'd love to find out what that set point is that you must be at before the USB charging will take over. Okay, we're at 10.93 volts. Let's see if it does a charge at that level. No, look at that. Okay, so we are zeroing in on the set point. This is great. So at 10.87 volts, it will not accept a charge. Let's go ahead and turn this back on. Again, I don't know if it's going to switch over to USB charging on its own or if it needs to be unplugged and replugged in, but I have a feeling it's the latter. So let me unplug this. Just for fun, let's take it to 11.4. Yeah, at that point it will not charge. Look at that. So we've zeroed in pretty closely. 11.4, it will not accept USB charge. Kick it up to 11.5. It looks like it's already decided that charging isn't going to happen, so it's not going to try again. But if I unplug it with the battery at 11.5 volts, plug it in again, there we go. We're getting a 4-watt charge. Now, if I turn off the external power supply, it's dropping a tad, but it is getting a 4-watt charge from its own internal charge circuitry. That is still very low, but it's worlds away from the 0.82 watts that it was showing earlier. So here's what I think is going on. I'm gonna charge this battery up to some low voltage, let's say around 6 volts or something. That's enough for the USB charge circuitry to turn on, but it measures the voltage on the cells and says that's too low to charge. I'm not gonna actually pass any power along to the battery. Once you hit 11.5 volts on the battery pack itself, you can plug in a USB-C PD charger. The BMS in here determines that the battery pack is at a sufficient voltage to accept a charge, and it goes to 0.2 amps. It's programmed slow charge rate, just like I was trying to do by limiting the current. It's limiting the current on this low voltage battery until it gets to some level where it will kick up the current and thus the wattage close to the 60 watt maximum that it's rated for. So we'll see what level that is. I'm going to leave this plugged in because the external power supply, though it is not providing any power, is just acting as a meter for now. So interesting thing about the charge indicator, we saw already in red, that's when the charge input power is too low. It will also turn white when it switches to a fast charge. And right now when it's at this basic, call it 4-watt charge, that light is off completely. By the way, this is similar to what you would get if you used a USB-A to USB-C charging cable. The NOCO has decided it's only going to accept charge at a very slow rate to start, and at some point along the way it will get to a high enough pack voltage that it will allow fast charging to proceed. All right, and that's fully charged. You can see that the wattage dropped down. It was at 45 and then lower wattage, and now it's down to the 0.82, which we found out earlier is really just the level that you see when the circuitry is operating but no charging is going on. Finished off the charge at about 16.5 volts, and like I say, this is a 4S battery, so max, if you were to max out each cell, that would be a 16.8 volt charge, but 16.5 roughly is where it cuts off, and it looks like this unit is back up and running. I can turn on the headlight, of course, and let's see if the just the regular functionality. Well, I gotta unplug it. Let's unplug both the power supply and the USB-C charger. We can go ahead and use it like this. Okay, this is turning the power button on. Acting normally, I'll hold down the override button for about 5 seconds, and we're on the 12 volt output. I'll use my power meter or my power supply again as a meter here, and we'll just see what the voltage is on these output clamps. Now, of course, this is protection's turned off, so you got to be careful when you're in the override mode, but this should tell us what it's actually. Excuse the little spark there, got a cap in the variable power supply here. But yeah, sure enough, it's just directly connected, the clamps to the battery. 16.42 volts is what's on the clamps right now. So we'll turn override off and disconnect again. And yeah, so that's the call it the repair of this unit in terms of making it charge. Of course, the next step is to actually jump a car with it and to do a battery capacity test. Okay, so I'm ready to test the total capacity of this battery, and the way I'm going to do that is using this load tester, where I can set a a cutoff voltage and a particular load current. To get an accurate measurement of the battery, I'm going to put a load directly on the battery versus using the USB out port, so that I can come as close as possible to the rating, which is on the back of the case here. So this is rated at 46 watt hours, and that's almost certainly from a tip-top charge and from the battery, not through the USB charger. So we're down to no current. So the battery is fully charged. I'll get this out of the way and hook up my load tester. So I'm going to plug it in. And I've got the current turned all the way down. It's already complaining at me that its voltage is under 11.5 volts. Let me just hook this up so it stops beeping. So I'm going to connect the negative to the lead that goes directly to the battery, and then the positive to the battery clamp. Now it should stop complaining. So it's registering 16.3 volts. What I want to do is run it at just like a 1 amp discharge. The manufacturer may have even done a slower discharge, but I'll use 1 amp, and the 11.5 volts, that's because I set a cutoff voltage at 11.5 volts, and that's because that's the level where the BMS previously turned on. So I'm just going to ramp up the current here a little bit. It's fairly sensitive, there we go. So I have to tune it in to right at 1 amp. There we go. Oh, I thought I had it. There we go. So I'm set to 1 amp, and it's recording the current which is consumed by the battery. And when it gets down to 11.5 volts, that's where it will stop and turn off, and I'll be able to take a look at the screen here and see what the total consumed power was in watt hours and amp hours, and be able to compare that to the 46 watt hours advertised on the back cover. So here we are, we've reached the end of the discharge, and the cutoff happened at 11.5 volts. I'll go ahead and disconnect the battery so I can read the stats. And it looks like it took 2 hours, 36 minutes to discharge. Sorry about that. And came up with 38.61 watt hours, 2.61 amp hours. So not too bad, 38, we'll call it 39 watt hours for a rated capacity of 46 watt hours. So either because it's not new or because I discharged at a faster rate than they did when they came up with the battery capacity, it's a little bit lower, but I don't think significantly so. Nothing to worry about. So the next step is just to repair this insulation and actually try it out on a car, but I think this one is fixed and will be able to be used for a long, long time.